Okay, so we're continuing today with the Pesach prep that we began last week. And where we are is, you may remember the pages that were blacked out, and we were kind of wondering what was there. The reason they were blacked out, it turns out, was that the printer didn't work well with the Hebrew font, and it was Hebrew. So what it was a number of blessings that we say in the process of preparing the house for Pesach. So the first thing is the search for chametz the night before. After the house is cleaned, as you remember, we took care of cleaning the house, getting the kitchen ready, turning it over, preparing it for... So when you finish that, then you search for chametz. You do a thorough search for chametz. You use a feather, a wooden spoon, and a candle, and you search for chametz. Now, most of us, Baruch Hashem, really don't have chametz, but we're looking for it, and so our wives, out of kindness, don't want us to walk away empty-handed. So for some Kabbalistic reasons, they will hide 10 pieces of chametz. And this is something you do as soon after Mariv as you can. You can involve your children, but the primary responsibility is yourself, because it's quite a serious thing. There is loose chametz in your house, a dangerous environment to be in. Now, most of the time, wives will wrap the chametz in paper very tightly, so there's no crumbs that can get out of it. If in doubt, beyond that, they can even put it in 10 small snack bags as well. But so then, and they, after they hide it, they should make a list as they're hiding it where they hid it. Very important.
Yeah, don't forget.
Because if you find 9 of them, then one of them will drive you crazy for the rest of Pesach. Right? And you shouldn't own it, shouldn't have it. So you want to know where they are. At least she has to know where they are if you don't know where they are. So that's, she makes the list as she hides them. Now, there is a tradition in some homes to put the chametz strategically placed in a way that makes some hints from the wife to the husband. For instance, maybe she might leave 2 pieces of chametz on top of the TV, or 1 piece on top of the computer. By the way, one of the places you need to be very careful to clean is the keyboard of the computer, if you have one in your house. If you can, what we do in our home is that we actually have a Pesach keyboard. They're not that expensive to buy. It's 8 days. You get a cheap one. You can get it for under $25, and then it's perfectly clean. You put your good one, not your good one, but your chametz stick one away, and you sell, clean as best you can, and then sell it. But it's not a bad idea to just get another keyboard to use during. I mean, you're only doing it 4 days, or Chol Moed, because you're not going to be using the keyboard during the Hag anyway. But if you're KosherTube and you need to get to the keyboard to update the site during Chol Moed, it's good not to be typing on chametz. So she might put one on the computer. These are indications that, you know, maybe a little less time should be spent on TV, or a little less time on the computer, or maybe you know, the toothbrush shouldn't be left on the floor, or the socks could be picked up. So they can be placed strategically to gently remind her spouse of some places where he could improve, you know, and the house would be better off. It's not a requirement. Some families do that. So you collect the chametz into a paper bag. There's a bracha you say, which is, blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the removal of chametz. So that's the first thing you say, right? When you complete it, you take the 10 pieces of chametz, you wrap them very, very well, preferably in a paper bag, right? Because they're going to be burned the next day, right? And you make a bracha, kol hamachia, which is any chametz which is my possession, which I did not see and remove, nor know about, shall be nullified and become ownerless like the dust of the earth. Right? So, you know, if you have tiny pieces of chametz around, inedible, that, yeah, I mean, if you have a donut, it's a problem. right? Or a bagel, right? That's within reach, and you just thought, maybe I'll leave it because who knows, I don't want to eat it during Pesach. You got a problem. But for instance, if there's chametz that you didn't get off the bottom of the fridge rollers, right, and it's troubling you, you should know that through this bracha you've nullified it completely, and it's no longer food, it's dust, right? So it's not a problem, right? Because you've made every effort you could already. Before burning the chametz, right, you're going to make a similar bracha again, right? And that takes, and so the next morning you go maybe with your children. In our case, in the big shul, the Bayat shul, the Vaughan Fire Department comes. They have a dumpster that's burning. They have a controlled burn. Usually the fireman has a sign on the back of his fire suit that says Vaughan Fire Department, Chametz Department, and he oversees it each year. It's a very pleasant community thing, the destruction of chametz, right? And we're going to talk more about why we destroy chametz and what its meaning is next week, when we get into some of the more yummy insights after we've gotten through the details of how to do it. He supervises the burning. People often will burn other objects that were mitzvah objects that you have to destroy, that you want to throw out. For instance, lulav and esrog, or which you've saved from, not your esrog, rather your lulav and things, and the other three species that are with you. You may want to burn them rather than throw them away. So you can, at this time is a good time to burn them. You may want to burn the wicks from your Shabbos and Hanukkah candles, Yom Tov candles that you've saved all year long. They're connected with Yom Tov, if you're using oil, or if you have wicks left over. So you save them, and again, it's something that at this time you put into the paper bag with the chametz, and you throw them into the fire. You make your bracha, you destroy it, you walk away. You're floating at this point. This is a wonderful time as you do it. If you have children, they come with you. It's a very visually exciting thing. One of the things about Pesach is that it's filled with different kinds of media. Visual excitement, the audio excitement, the sense of smell, the sense of touch. Everything is involved in Pesach. And of course, this huge fire is something that everybody remembers. By the way, it can be dangerous if it's not a controlled situation, so one has to be very careful about it. Very often at this time people get serious burns.
Wow.
So it's something to be very careful about if you're not doing it in a community environment. As we mentioned last year, or at our last meeting, prior to this, if you need to do any koshering, many communities have one day where they do a community koshering as well, of dishes that people who can't afford it are transferring the dishes from chametzik to Pesach dishes. Now, when the last day of Pesach falls on Shabbos, right? Or sorry, the second day of Pesach falls on Shabbos, or the third day, it's a 3-day Hag. You have Pesach, and Shabbos. Right? Then there's a question: how do you prepare for Shabbos? And this is a problem with any Hag that falls after, or any Shabbos that falls after a Hag. The answer to it is a thing called Erev Tavshalom. It's a bracha that you make, and you make it prior to the holiday beginning, and in it you make the blessing that says, what I'm preparing now on the day before the Hag is intended also for Shabbos, and it gives me the right to prepare during this time, right? That I'm not violating the dignity of the Hag by doing it on the Hag. So you're going to say, blessed are you, Hashem. By the way, this doesn't apply this particular year because Shabbos is actually part of the holiday as opposed to after.
Yeah, it's on Friday and Saturday.
Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by His commandments, and concerning the commandments of Erev. Through this Erev, may we be permitted to bake, to cook, to fry, to insulate, to kindle flame, to prepare for and do anything necessary on the festival for the sake of Shabbos, for ourselves and all the Jews who live in this city. Now, if for some reason, right, you didn't do it and you find yourself in this position, there is a minhag that you can rely on the Rav of the community to have said this for your community. Right? But most Ravs will say, don't count on me. Right? What if I forget? Who are you going to rely on? So we're going to stop with the book now and go back to our pages. The Erev Shabbos checklist. Okay? The fast of the firstborn. Right? So we know that just before the Pesach, the Egyptian firstborn were slain. So we celebrate that our firstborn were not. Right? And we do it with a fast, actually. If you have a siyum, that is to say you have completed, or somebody in your community has completed, say, a Masechta of the Gemara, or a volume of the Mishnah,
something
on that moment, right? Then they have the right to celebrate and have a siyum. Right? In which case, right, you don't have to fast. Right? In most communities, and I'm sure this will be true for you, will have a siyum. So it's important to try to go to shul. And it's a very busy day, Erev Pesach, right? But it starts with the siyum, which permits you to eat throughout the day. Right? If you don't go to Shabbos for Shacharis and be part of the siyum, then you should fast for the day. Right? So it's a good idea to try and get.
So this is Erev the day before. So this Erev is the night of.
Yeah, in this case it's the Friday.
Friday.
Right.
No, Thursday evening. Wouldn't it?
Thursday night you did the search for chametz.
Thursday night. Okay.
Friday morning.
Yes.
The first thing you did was go to Shacharis,
which would have the siyum.
Which has the siyum, right?
Okay.
And it means you're going to have a little bit of food. You're going to celebrate the completion of whatever got completed with everybody else, and consequently you're not fasting.
Oh, I see. Okay.
After that, if you have utensils you have to kosher, you'll be koshering them, right? And you have to complete that by 11:10. This is in Toronto. For everybody, they should check with their local Rav as to how these times apply. The times I'm giving you are for Vaughan, actually, Toronto area. By 12:09, you should have burned your chametz. So that means you don't start burning at 12:09. You should be for sure at the place of the burning, say 11:45 at the latest. All right. And as I said, you can kind of get there early. It's a community thing. It's nice, It's mostly men and their sons, because very often wives are very busy at this time in the final preparations of the food for Pesach, so it's very often a time when fathers and sons are quite busy there. By 12:15. Remove the vacuum cleaner bags and clean the dust busters, because after you've been cleaning, you've been accumulating chametz in the vacuum. So you want to get rid of that as well. Remove the garbage to the street by 12:15. Right? What we're seeing here is by 12:15 you're rid of chametz completely.
You're chametz free.
So let's just do a quick review. You cleaned the house in an amazing way. And then you did a very careful search for the chametz. And you put whatever chametz you found in a paper bag, along with the feather, along with the wooden spoon. You tied it up tight to make sure no mice would get into it and pull your chametz all over the place, right? And you put it away somewhere safe, not with your regular food because it's chametz, but you might have put it inside a plastic bag, just to make sure everything is very safe, but you've got it all. And you may have put the other things you're going to burn in that plastic bag to take with you. So you nullified, after you found it, you nullified any chametz in the house. Right? Prior to that, anything that could have possibly have chametz in it that you own, you disowned, you sold. Forgot about that. We talked about that last week. You sold your chametz through the Rav, right? And any chametz that is sticking to any of your utensils that you couldn't get off, you sold that as well to the Gentile. Then you did the search for chametz, then you nullified the chametz, then in the morning you went to the fire and you burned whatever chametz was left, and you nullified it a second time. Right? And you made sure that there's no chametz in the house by 12:15 in Toronto. That's where you stand, right? So you make sure the garbage is in the street, and then You take your pre-Pesach nap.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully your wife gets to take a pre-Pesach nap too. In my house, nobody not only has ever napped before Pesach, I hate to admit, people have really not gotten enough sleep the night before because there's so much to do. But really, once 12:15 comes along, Chametz is done. It's like Shabbos is coming in certain ways. But there's usually still things to do. We'll see. You should light a yard-side candle prior to the beginning of the holiday.
No.
Because on the second day of the holiday, keep in mind, the second day of the holiday, we can't start a flame. We can continue a flame that already exists. So you can't light a match on the second day, and you do want to light your second day candles, for instance, right? We'll come to cooking and issues like that later. So that's how we light, for instance, the second night's candles. And we'll come to it in a little while. One is permitted to eat chametz until the end of the fourth halachic hour of the day. For the year 5772, which is this year, that time is till 11:10 a.m. Right? So everything, you don't eat any chametz after that point. Right?
So after 11:10, finished,
right.
Chametz is gone.
Right. Now some people hold it's forbidden to eat matzah the day of Erev Pesach. Some people hold the week before. Some people hold the month before. You shouldn't eat matzah because you want to enjoy the taste of matzah. If you've just been eating it non-stop, we're going to eat matzah again tonight.
Okay, I'm a little confused a little bit though. The matzah, you can't eat matzah on Erev Pesach, but Friday night is the first Seder. You would be eating matzah.
No, that's Pesach itself.
Right. So it's not Erev anymore.
Right. Once you've lit candles had done for the Seder, you're now into Pesach. It's not before Pesach.
Okay.
You know, your Erev Shabbos as you're going to shul for Mincha and Mariv. When you come home, it's not Erev Shabbos. It's Shabbos.
Okay, I get it. Okay.
Although it's a good point because some people talk about, are you coming to my home for Erev Shabbos? Right. Mm-hmm. It's really Shabbos evening meal, Shabbos night meal. Right. You're not eating the meal before Shabbos comes in.
So Mincha would still be is Erev Pesach.
Mincha is still Erev, right?
But Mariv is Pesach.
Mariv is already into that. That's right. Yeah. Certainly the day before, for 24 hours, you're not eating matzah. Egg matzahs should be avoided, preferably avoided, and are prohibited after 11 a.m. Some people hold that for people who are infirm in their digestive systems, very old and have weak digestive systems, or very young and have immature digestive systems, that people can eat egg matzahs in that case. In our home, we don't really have egg matzahs in the house.
You're saying egg matzah shouldn't be used at all during Passover?
Not really, no.
It's not an official matzah and egg matzah?
It's not really matzah.
Oh, it's not really matzah?
No, matzah is made from water and flour. That's it.
So where did egg matzah come from? Why did they do it?
You know, people eat matzahs during the year, right? And that's one of the ways they eat it. They call it egg matzah. It's not really matzah. Right? So one of the most important things about matzah, which we're talking about right now, that there is what's called a blood libel against Jews, and there are people over the generations who are vicious anti-Semites have claimed that Jews use the blood of non-Jews' children to make matzah. This is about the most outrageous libel one could have, not just because it's a horrendous concept, but only very evil people could even think of it. But the fact of the matter is, matzah that is made with eggs, matzah that's made with milk, matzah that's made with anything other than water and flour is not matzah, and actually is not part of the Seder or Pesach, right? So if you have matzah that you put honey in the dough because it tastes really good, right? Because they enjoy it, but you're not going to have it on Pesach, right? And certainly not at your Seder, but you shouldn't have it in your house, right? Matzah, by definition, if you've ever been to a matzah factory, right, on one side of the factory is the Mayim Chaim, the living waters. On the other side is the flour. They're kept separate until the moment that the alarm goes off. Then quickly they start the process of making it, and it is in the oven and cooked 18 minutes, right, before any leavening can happen, right? And there's only 2 products involved in it. Those 2 products are very interesting products. They are, as Rabbi Mordechai Torchiner said in a shir recently, they are 2 products that by their definition disappear. If you pour water on a surface, right, it will seek the lowest point it can and just splash and move, on the table, just spread out and eventually run off the edges of it, right? If you take flour and put it down, it will not stick together. It'll be just all over the place. And if somebody opens the door and closes it, it'll blow everywhere.
Yeah.
It scatters. Flour scatters. Water dissipates and flows to the floor. But when you combine water and flour, these 2 things that dissipate, right, not only do they come together, they actually become glue. After all, what is simple glue made of? Is actually water and flour.
Yeah.
Right? For us, matzah is made from it. It's an idea that it sticks together, that there's a firmness to it. Right? I didn't mean to get into this conversation right now. We should have saved it for another time. But it's something worth observing. The important thing to understand is the matzah at your table
Has to be the truth.
Can only be water and flour and made in 18 minutes. Many people hold by a tradition of using what's called shmura matzah, handmade shmura matzah, which is matzah that the flour has been washed from its cutting to make sure no water got onto the grains so that it didn't leaven, right? and it's made by hand and supervised. There are others. I just heard from Rebbitzin Esther Wein that her grandfather, Reb Shimon Schwab, one of the great Gedolim of his time, only used machine matzah, not the handmade matzah, machine-made shmura matzah, because he was counting on the fact that there would be no room for human error.
Yeah.
And so that matzah would be even more perfect. In any case, I don't want to get into the conversation too much because we need to move on.
Yeah.
But the point is that egg matzahs are prohibited after 11 o'clock, after 11:10 in Toronto, right? According to most opinions, which is, by the way, the end of the eating of any chametz, right, as we noted earlier. According to most opinions, one should not eat baked foods containing matzah meal, i.e. Pesach cake, during this time. This is a time to stay away from either Pesach or chametz, for sure chametz or even Pesach foods, because you don't want to have the taste of matzah in your mouth either, because you want to enjoy the sweetness of the matzah when the time comes. So there are some vegetables you could eat. You could eat a piece of fish, things like that. You want to stay away from the things. One may eat boiled or fried foods containing matzah meal, gebrux, until the beginning of the 10th halachic hour. As a rule, we don't. We just stay away from all of those things, right? Gebrux is something we'll talk about later. Right? Gebrux means broken. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
It's customary not to eat kitnios. Kitnios is something that separates the Sephardim from the Ashkenaz. Right? You'll notice when you talk to your Rebbitzin, for instance, that she doesn't eat rice on Pesach. There are Sephardim who do eat rice. Rice is for sure in no way chametz-dik. There's no question about it that it's not chametz-dik. But there are a number of foods that Ashkenazi Jews don't eat, and they don't eat it not because they're chametz, but because they have some things in common with chametz. Right? They can be made into cakes. They are a grain. They're grown in an area where one of the 5 grains that we don't eat on Pesach that make chametz are grown. They are stored in a facility that may store things that are forbidden on Pesach. These things fall into an area called kitnios, where you're allowed to own it, you're not allowed to eat it on Pesach. Right. So it's customary not to eat kitnios after 11 o'clock. By the way, these foods don't rise. Unlike, say, wheat. where if you mix it and it has all the ingredients in it, it will rise from yeast, even yeast in the air. That's what sourdough bread is. If you take rice and make it into rice flour and leave it, it won't rise, it'll rot. Right? It's one of the things that separates it from the 5 grains rise, the other things don't. They'll rot eventually. So it's customary not to eat kitnios, this is for Ashkenazim. In times of need, one may be lenient all day if the food has a reliable hechsher for Pesach. Reliable hechsher for Pesach means that it's permitted for Sfardim, who can eat kitnios on Pesach. You may eat foods like meat, fish, eggs, fruit, vegetables all day. However, after 4:36 in Toronto, one should eat with moderation in order to eat the matzah in the evening.
Don't overstuff yourself.
Now the Seder preparations, right? Okay. So these are things that you do, I guess, after your nap. The Seder plate needs to be prepared, right? So you have to have either the chicken neck or the shank bone, whatever you're going to use. Some people roast it, some people forbid roasting it, because roasting is how you want to prepare the Paschal sacrifice. Many people won't roast their food. They'll cook it in any way other than roasting it. A hard-boiled egg for the Higiga sacrifice should be prepared, and the way you do it usually is to hard-boil it and then to burn it a little bit on the burner, so it has a little bit of blackness to it, as though it's a korban. Right? Vegetables for karpas should be prepared. Karpas has to be adama. Some people use potatoes. Some people use parsley.
You use celery.
Right? You can use celery. Some people use onion. Right? Onion and potatoes are, of course, available in very cold climates, even in the winter. So they're good for Jews from, say, Eastern Europe, where Pesach can be very cold. Parsley, I noted in a garden that I once had, actually seems to be the first thing that comes up in the spring. So that may be the reason. Now, one of the reasons we dip the karpas in salt water, and we'll come to that later, is to ask the question, why are you doing that? Right? We haven't even started the meal and you're dipping potatoes in salt water. And children, if they ask that, it's part of the question of why is this night what it is, right? But dipping potatoes or parsley in salt water is not so strange. So Rabbi Torchiner dips bananas and pineapple in salt water.
Yeah. Because
nobody ever forgets that when it happens. Right? No kid says, why do you dip the pineapple in salt water? Which is exactly what you want at that moment, right? So, but it needs to be a dama, and different families have different traditions as to what they are. But you need to prepare that.
Dama means it came from the earth, right? Like
Adama, that's right.
From the earth. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's why celery, because it grows in the ground.
Right. Okay. So lettuce or romaine needs to be checked to make sure there's no bugs, and your wife will know how to do that. We won't go into that in detail right now. We have videos about how to check on KosherTube. Horseradish should be ground and placed in a sealed container to keep it as burning and hot as possible. Charoset should be prepared and chopped and made ready. Salt water has to be prepared. The wine bottles, the seals should be broken and prepared and open, so you don't have to open them during the Hag. Matzah boxes should be open. And by the way, you probably will want to take out 3 matzahs for the leader's table that are in very good shape. You want to inspect them carefully to make sure that there's no pieces missing from it. It can be cracked if it was cracked prior to cooking, and you can see if the cracks have cooked pieces on a fine. If it cracked after it was cooking, it's probably not one that you should use for those 3 matzahs. Although the afikomen is going to be broken during the service, we don't really hold that you should have pre-broken matzah. You should do it during the service, even though the matzah suppliers often provide that for us. It's why you want to make sure that you have enough matzah that if any are broken, you're going to have enough to be safe. The pillows need to be brought so that people can recline. Reclining is very important. You have to have haggadahs for everybody at the table, preferably the same haggadah for everybody. Although some people may bring their own haggadah. On the Hag, you're permitted to carry it, so you may bring a haggadah that you're familiar and comfortable with.
Here's an interesting one. Since our Hag this time is during Shabbos, you technically carry.
No,
right.
The Shabbos always
overrides.
So you can't carry, unless of course there's an error.
Yeah.
Wine glasses should be measured to meet the minimum requirement. So,
here's interesting. What's the minimum requirement?
So the minimum requirement is just a little bit under 3 ounces. So you should have, a wine glass that is around 3 ounces. Is a good.
The one I use for Kiddush would be is acceptable.
You can, but remember, I don't know what size it is, but remember, you should measure it because you're going to have 4 of them, and you really should have the whole cup.
And it's a pretty big cup.
So if you have, say, an 8-ounce cup, right? You really are expected to fill the cup up and drink all of it, as opposed to saying, I have an 8-ounce cup, I'll fill it with 3 ounces and drink that. It's as though the cup is really,
So you have a special cup for that.
So it's good to have pasted cups, right? And certainly for your guests, you can get plastic cups that are 3 ounces, or you can buy them, in a store. But you want to try and find that size.
So it has to be 3 ounces and up.
Yeah. All of the things that are measured, you have to have in mind at this point in the evening, before everything starts, because you want to prepare things in the right shear. A shear is the amount, right? It's very important. Right? Saucers you might want to put under the wine glasses just to preserve the tablecloth for a little bit longer, or cover the tablecloth with plastic. Chart from matzah and moror minimum requirements, or the moror should be, in our house we pre-measure the moror and the charoset into little shot glasses that are the right amount. We'll talk about those later, but that way we just pass around the shot glasses, right? We have a plastic container filled with shot glasses. Everybody takes their shot glass and they're covered. They have exactly the right amount. Matzahs are interesting, and the minimum amount of matzah you should have is somewhere between, for each kazayas, is somewhere between 2/3 of a shmor matzah and the size of your palm, depending on how you hold. That's the absolute minimum. Is a kazayas is considered the size of your palm.
A single round finger matzah thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or some people, the biggest that people hold is 2/3 of a shmor matzah, right? And remember, you have to eat it quite rapidly. We'll come to that later. So a chart for that. Washing basin should be ready in the kitchen in order to do nitilat yadayim. The Seder plate with the 3 matzahs we talked about needs to be prepared. Once you've prepared everything else, it's pretty easy to prepare it. Pour wine into decanters if you're going to use decanters. Prepare a cover or towel for the afikoman. You need somewhere to put the afikoman. Extra matzahs have to be at the table because the three matzahs you don't serve all at once. You only serve one at a time, and it's clearly not going to be enough for everybody at your table. So you want to have additional matzahs for everybody. And people should all be eating shmor, either hand shmor or non-hand shmor, machine shmor for the Seder. So you don't have to, it's a kosher, but it really is best to have shmor matzah, because one of the things is people making the matzah have in mind and actually say that it's for the mitzvah of matzah that they're making it. So their level of emunah, their level of thought at this point is very important, and it adds to it. The extra matzah at the table, the extra moror, which is not on the plate, is in the fridge. Some people hold the tradition that you wear a kittel, which is something you wear on Yom Kippur. A kittel is a white garment that you'll see people on Yom Kippur wearing. Everybody's dressed in white. Some people wear it also for the Pesach meal. Many men do. It's nice to have new clothing and a gift for your wife before any Hag, if one can afford it. So new clothing and jewelry for women is nice. Okay, that's the preparation.
Cool.
Here's the big question. How to have a sensational Seder. Okay? Page 1. Before we succeed in any planned activity, we need to know what the goal of our activity is. Right. Lesson. We can spend a lot of time working on the activity but never achieve the goal, since our activities are not focused on the goal and are unrelated to the goal. So what is the goal of the Seder? Right? Or more global question, what is the goal of holidays in general? To teach us to have emunah, an understanding of belief in God. Each holiday does it in a different way. Shavuos appeals to the intellect. Remember, we spend all night learning Torah before Shavuos, and it's the day that we celebrate the giving of the Torah itself. Right? The high holidays, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, are emotional. They touch you in terms of a very personal relationship with God through tshuva and simcha, which, by the way, includes Shavuos, includes Sukkot as well. So was Torah. Right? Pesach is a physical, we talked about earlier, it's a physical sensory holiday. It involves many physical activities that should touch you deeply inside. It's called emunah b'chush, emunah of the senses of the body. So it says on page 44 in this Haggadah, which is the Artswell Haggadah. Many people have slightly different versions of it, but it will tell you at the bottom of the page, B'kol dor vador, in every generation it is one's duty to regard himself as though he had personally gone out of Egypt. As is written, you shall tell your son on that day, it was because of this that Hashem did for me when I went out of Egypt. Right? Not only for our fathers whom the Holy One blessed is he redeemed from slavery, we too were redeemed with them, as it is written, he brought us out from there so that he might take us to the land which he had promised to our fathers. And I often tell the story that I believed until I was 6 years old that my father himself was a slave in Mitzrayim because of the way my father told the story. And we'll talk about that another night, but it's very important, right? That it not be that you're like a slave in Egypt, but that you have a memory, call it a genetic memory, of slavery in Egypt. And that memory of it will affect all of your behavior, all of your life. Right? And conveying that on this night is critical. You convey it every day. Every mitzvah we have is connected to the freedom from Mitzrayim. And we talk about it. And when we say Shema, we have a whole final paragraph or a paragraph that's devoted to that. So we think about it every day. But this holiday and this night, this first night, is a night in which we really focus on the going from slavery to freedom, going from being slaves to Paro to be servants to Hashem. That's the nature of this, right? Many rabbis say that this is the most difficult mitzvah of the year, but for some it's not. The greatest way to believe in God is to personally feel the salvation He is bringing to you today in your life, to know it's not a historical event. The son who is the Rasha says, what does this mean to you? To you as if he's not part of it. He's an archaeologist observing a quaint activity. Right? No, this is something that means something to me. Right? I feel the feeling. I remember when Aaron's brother came back and everybody said, he is the Redeemer, he's going to take us out. And no longer did my fingers bleed from working in the mud pits. No longer did everything I have belong to somebody else, even my time, even my thoughts. Suddenly, I was going to be a servant of somebody who only cared about me and was the central force of the universe. And these are the feelings that we should have on this day. This is the day where it changes from one to the other. And so it should be in our own lives.
Number 5 method.
Outward activities influence one's internal feelings. The goal of the Seder is to meet the Almighty at the Seder night. The Zohar HaKodesh, the book of Jewish mysticism, says that on the Seder night we are dining at the Almighty's table. We should feel it every Shabbos, every day, but especially on this day. That we're joined by Eliyahu, the messenger, right? We should feel that Hashem Himself is there. You know, it says that when He was slaughtering the firstborn, it wasn't a malach, it wasn't a seraph, it was I myself, says Hashem, will go through Egypt and do it on this night. Right? So we should know that on this night Hashem sits with us and is part of, we're at His table. Right? The Seder is the best lesson plan in terms of teaching. It has 6 components which should be used wisely. The story. A story is non-threatening. It is not a lecture, not demanding, just enjoyable. Stories may put people to sleep, but Jewish stories wake them up. Tell other inspiring stories with similar themes. For instance, the miracle of the Six-Day War, miracles that happened during the Holocaust of survival. Right? Songs. If you have somebody who knows the songs, even your son will probably learn the song of the 4 questions. He may learn the song of the steps of the Seder, even quite young, right? You can look up the song, we have it, of the 10 Machos. We have many of the Seder songs on KosherTube. Variation. Sit, stand, cover the matzahs, uncover the matzahs, raise the cup, dip the vegetables, break the matzah, recline, rest, hide a piece of matzah, spill drops of wine. All kinds of activities going on. Questions. I was asked by one of our guests this week, he said, thank you very much for inviting us, what can I bring? I said, bring questions. Bring questions. The most important gift you can bring to Pesach is questions, right? Because questions stimulate the mind. You know, people will sit and listen, but the thing that they want most is to have their questions answered. So this is a night where you should bring questions. The 4 questions are central. The whole nature of the Haggadah is questions and answer. Right? So he says people ask questions, are eager to find answers. We do odd things to stimulate questions. We dip pineapple in apples, or pineapples and bananas, rather. You should reward a question with prizes. You know, it depends on the age of your guests, but sometimes you can reward them with a great answer, right? Or somebody else can give them a great answer. Right? Eating, drinking is part of the lesson. Make sure you internalize it. We say Hallel in the middle when we're kind of, we eat the meal in the middle of Hallel. We begin Hallel, and then we eat the meal. It seems the meal is part of Hallel. Hallel are songs of praise of God. The meal itself should be a praise of God, should be part of Hallel. We break Hallel. We never do it at any other time, in order that we have the meal. So it must mean that the meal itself has some praise of God in itself. Intrigue. The wise use of the afikomen to keep people awake till the end. Remember, we're going to find the afikomen, and there's something.
My next question is, why do we even do it? Why do we hide the afikomen? What's the significance?
Like many things in the Seder table, you know, people. There's a lot of partying that goes on in Purim, right? And you know, Rabbi told a story about a Zaidi once. He was sitting at his Pesach table, and one of the children said, "Zaidi, why did they do this?" No questions. We're now at the Holy Seder. Let's pay attention. No questions. Unfortunately, that's not the right approach. Right? What we want is we want questions. So we do strange things in order the questions will be stimulated. Once, you know, sometimes when a person gives a shiur, at the end he says, any questions, any comments? And nobody wants to be the first person to ask a question. It's like, what if I ask a stupid question? Right? Okay, he asked a stupid question. Mine isn't going to be any stupider than his. Now I can ask my question. So we need to get questions going, because the Haggadah in the evening is about stimulating questions. It's the best way to learn. Questions. You just ask a question. So many of the things we do on that night is simply to do something strange, right? So that someone says, why? In the case of the afikomen, right, the afikomen, which we see at the beginning of the meal, right, is part of the Paschal sacrifice, right? The last thing people ate when the temple stood was the Paschal sacrifice, and they ate it with matzah. Right? We don't have the Paschal sacrifice in the temple, so we just have the matzah. Right? The matzah we're eating is represented from the afikomen at that point. We hide the afikomen, and we've been doing it for thousands of years. It's not a new thing. So that the children have a reason to stay alert. You know, they're thinking the whole meal as where is the afikomen. Now, when the camera's not on, I'll tell you a couple of secrets about when to hide the afikomen and how to hide the afikomen. But there might be people watching us, so this is one of the things I don't like to talk about on camera. I hope everyone will forgive me. You'll each have to figure out how to hide the afikomen and where. But I suggest strongly you determine way ahead of time where you want to hide the afikomen. I know one person who used to hide it in the matzah case.
Oh,
everywhere for it.
Look, not
right?
in the
But
matzah
he didn't have it. It was right there in front of him. But that's not where I hide it.
Okay.
So, where are we now?
Number 7, making a good Seder.
Okay. So making a good Seder is easy as P-I-E. Easy as pie. P stands for be prepared. I stands for make it interesting. And E stands for make it entertaining. Right? Be willing to spend some money on this if you can. You know your crowd. Provide age-appropriate program. What do you do if your guests want to start the Seder early? Make sure that you have identical copies of the Haggadah. Recommended Haggadahs are the Chet Haggadah, the Art Scroll Family Haggadah, this one. There are many ones. You have to choose what you think will work for the people around you. You should review the Haggadah in advance. You can make notes on the Haggadah for yourself. Refresh about the songs. Look up interesting Devar Torahs. You should be prepared. Right? 13. Choose sections you're going to focus on. Show what the minimal critical parts are. We'll get to that later. Assign parts to be led by other people. That is to say, you know somebody's coming who is a good storyteller, good, knows things. Ask them, say, when we come to this part, I'd like you to do it. Right? Assign parts to be led by others. Don't take the whole job on yourself. It'll involve other people as well. Make sure all the foods are ready together with the measurements. We talked about this earlier. Review halachic measurements if necessary. Hand out a checklist. Here he says, this is an interesting idea. Just like in olden times, you've got to go to the fabric line to do it. Our parents may have been ancient, the sons of ancient, but they were not primitive. You can have a Bedouin tent style meal if you want. Right? Wear a kittel, which is your motivator. You can explain the meaning of a kittel. Some people do, some people don't. It depends on what your minhag is. Be unorthodox in how you present things in an orthodox way. Frogs, Jeopardy game, give out T-shirts at the end of the Seder and say we left Egypt 2012. I have a friend who's a filmmaker who for 3 years returned from Egypt to his family on Pesach. He was getting into a habit of leaving Mitzrayim every Pesach. Ideas for a Passover survival kit, giveaways for kids and adults. I was just at one of the stores, one of the grocery stores, and they had a round circle with 10 finger puppets on it. I think they were selling it for under $20. So that a child or an adult could actually sit at the table, right? And with each plague, put up one finger, right? Here's frogs, right? Here's lice, here's kosher darkness. This one is the death of the firstborn.
That's cute.
Right? Oh, it's probably out of the camera, but anyway, so you could do it with finger puppets. Right? But there are many ways. People sell Makos kits for children, right? You can have Makos cards for them to look at. There's a lot of different possibilities. Cause and effect. What is the cause and what will create the effect of the Emunah B'chush? How are you going to touch people deeply, right? This is how the Haggadah begins. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu had not taken us out of Egypt, we and our children and our children's children and the whole family would still be there. Right? So Baruch Hashem, our ancestors got out, so we're here and we should be thankful for it. Appreciation, hakaras hatov, appreciation of the good. The whole Haggadah is based on this theme. In fact, most of Yiddishkeit is. I thank you on behalf of my family, on behalf of my Zaidi, and my great-grandfather, and my great-great-grandfather, going all the way back to my family in Mitzrayim. For if you would not save my family, we would still be slaves to Paro in Egypt. How true is this in every generation that we're saved? The generation that got out of Europe, through tremendous pain in our own time. The generation that survives in Eretz Yisrael through war after war. The generation that survived the near Purim massacre at the time of Esther and Mordechai. We have long lists of these things. They should never happen again. The cause of the Seder evening is hakaras hatov, gratitude. Say it out in many different ways on the night of the Seder. If you do, you will end up with emunah. This is a vital process. And by the way, hakaras hatov directed towards Hashem is very, very important. But hakaras hatov directed towards your own family is the example you want to set. Starting with your wife. The amount of work that we do is finite. The amount of work that they do is infinite. Right? And we should recognize it. We should recognize this publicly at the table. We should recognize it in the taste of the food and the effort that's been made into it, and the beauty of the home, and the wonders that our wives create for us. But we shouldn't stop there. Each of our children for sure contributed in some way to preparing for the Seder and making the Seder happen. That should be recognized. We should be thankful for our guests who come to us. We should be thankful for the people who made the matzah, who prepared the wine. All of these things. We should have a consciousness of all of them because, by the way, in having a hakaras hatov for them, we have a hakaras hatov for their source, which is Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the central thing here. Right? You can sit through 240 Seder nights, and that's 120 years. And every single year you can eat all the matzah and be dizzy as you want from the wine you drank, and you can find the afikomen every year, and you can cry over the moror, and you can say 100 commentaries on 10 plagues. But if you don't reach the point from the cause to the effect, you haven't sat there. You weren't there. There's a certain cause, a siba, and you must arrive at a mesuba, the effect, right? The cause of slavery, the freedom that Hashem gives us, the cause of who we are, the gift of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't mean to be critical, but you have the most delicious recipe of matzah balls, the most delicious wine, the best shmor matzah, but it isn't enough. Of course you're doing masay mitzvah, actively doing the mitzvah, but that's not the ikar, that's not the main point. The tachlis, the purpose, the tachlit, the purpose, the tachlis of the evening is to say out with as much appreciation as possible, hakaras hatov, Baruch Hashem, thank you, as you can, and then you'll arrive at emunah. These are the mechanics of the evening, and it's essential to come into the Seder like that.
Very nice.
Chavas Lavavas. The basis of the service to God is gratitude. The more you have the reason to be grateful to Hashem, we're not now, by the way, beating a dead horse. We're actually lifting up in the neshamas here, right? We are going to talk about this many times. Right? The more you have a reason to be grateful to Hashem, the more reason you will have to serve Him, and thereby come to believe in Him. Right? A great master makes his servant very happy. So we want to be a servant to the greatest master in the world. And the more we recognize God's greatness, the greater it is to be His servant. The structure underlies every word in the Haggadah, this structure. This point is the whole reason why we were called Yehudim. The root of the word, Yehuda, is lahodot, to give thanks, to appreciate. The minute you wake up in the morning, you thank God. Modeh ani. Right? You say hamotzi before eating bread. You say birkat hamazon after eating the benching. You have mezuzah on your door every Pesach, Shavuos, Hanukkah, Purim. The underlying theme of everything is l'hodot u'lahalel. right? To give thanks, to praise the Almighty. All the mitzvahs are woven with the same thread, Hakar Satov. Think about Paro for a moment. Paro had no gratitude to the Jews, to Moshe Rabbeinu, to all that they had done. He was a person without gratitude. He just took, right? He didn't have gratitude to the earth, to the water. He believed everything was about him, right? And so everything was taken from him. Right? So at the beginning we sing the Samani of the Seder, right? You'll see it if you open your book at the very beginning, and likely your child can lead this if he wants to. Kadosh Urchatz, we're on page 19. Yachatz Magid, and we just list all the elements of the Seder, the steps of the Seder, right? And so we actually do the steps after we've said it, right? By the way, keep in mind, what is a Seder? A Seder means order. It's the order of things that we're doing. When you're in yeshiva, people talk about night Seder, first Seder, second Seder. These are, instead of saying night class, right, morning class, right, this is the order of things that we do, right? So the Seder is an ordered event. Kadesh, 4 cups of wine, focus on the measurement of a cup of wine. The halacha says to have a cup that holds a riv'i, then drink it all up. So you need to be conscious of what you're doing here and why we're doing it, right? Point, if you find that your cup is not full, check the size of your cup, right? It's better that it should be a smaller cup, closer to a riv'i, let's say 3 ounces, and be full than it be 5. Karpas, Rabbi Riskin, he has a great story of 2 beggars. I won't tell the story now, but it's the idea that 2 beggars were in shul. They weren't aware of what Pesach was really about, but they came there because they knew they could get a meal. So they went to 2 different homes. In one home, the person sat through all the things that lead up to the meal, the moror, the matzah, a little bit of wine, some parsley, salt water, and then he had a feast fit for a king. The other one sat down. They gave him some dry bread. It wasn't even leavened. It was nothing. Right? They gave him a little bit of a slice of onion, dip it in the salt water. Right? Then they read and they talked forever. The guy's hungry, right? What's going on here? And finally they brought some food out. What did he get? Horseradish. The hottest horseradish you can imagine, and some more of this dry, flat bread, crackers. They said, that's good. Now we have something special. They took a little bit of honey and apples, dipped it, and they shook it off, right? And put more horseradish. He said, now I've had it. I've been sitting here for an hour and a half. You call this food? I'm getting out of here. And he walked away. Right? The next day he saw his friend. He said, did you have as bad a time as I did? No, I had a great time, right?
Beat like a king.
I think this is the story he's referring to. Yachatz, the concept of the guf and the neshama. You're breaking the matzah at this point, and then you have to hide it at some point. I won't say when you hide it. You carry the matzah on your back and you go around the table. This is very common among Sephardim. It's not a bad idea.
Really?
It's the idea of we put the dough on our back and it baked suddenly in the hot sun. Magi. We'll talk about which parts you're required to say, which parts you don't have to say, but the telling over the story of Yetziras Mitzrayim is the central mitzvah, the most important mitzvah of the Seder. It is no question a deraisa mitzvah. It's from the Torah. Many others of these mitzvahs that we're talking are not. Matzah is, although we're not sure which matzah is. Some matzah and magid are deraisa. So magid, which is telling over the story, magid means story, telling over the story, is critical. And I want to make very clear, a very important point here, is that there's no sense telling over a story that people don't understand. It's very, very important. So if people, for authenticity, want to tell the story in Hebrew and Yiddish, and there's nobody else in the room who understands it, then when they're reading their portion, they really should be reading it as a courtesy in a language that everybody at the table understands, right? If you're sitting around the Hebrew Seder, that's the best way to do it. Everybody should read it in Lashon HaKodesh, the way it was written. Perfect, right? But if there's a choice between reading in Lashon Kodesh or reading in a language that people understand, you should know you do not fulfill the mitzvah. So says Rav Shochet. You do not fulfill the mitzvah of Magid if the people there don't know it at the end of your telling it over. So be very cautious about saying, I'm at such a level, I can only do the Magid in the language that I know. Right? You have not fulfilled the central requirement of the Seder unless people hear the Magid in a language that they know and understand. Very important to understand. Matzah, chametz, what's the difference? Don't confuse the reality with the illusion. Shulchan Aruch, the meal is served. Start with eggs, and we'll talk about why at another time. At the end of the meal, people have to search for the afikomen. He says, leave the room for the afikomen at this point. Some people hide the afikomen at this point. Some people hide the afikomen maybe at another point. I don't know. But if you're watching the person leave the room to hide the afikomen now, let's just say if he's hiding it and you're watching him hiding it, even if you're not watching him, if you're listening carefully what part of the room he's gone to, it may be an unfair advantage. But it says here, now is the time to hide the afikomen. I think people hide it many different times. During the meal, discuss the pleasures and tell the story of inspiration, the miracles you feel in your life. The meal is a time, remember, it's in the middle of Hallel. Right? It's a great time to praise Hashem. The afikomen is retrieved and people get the prizes. My family as a child, my father had a policy that he encouraged the afikomen. You had to have the whole afikomen to finish the meal. Right? So this puts the finder of the afikomen in a position of tremendous leverage, as they say in the business world, because you're not going on the meal unless you reward me for the afikomen.
Bargaining.
So what's the lesson in here? Okay, negotiation is part of the lesson. But by the way, if you say to me, we're not going to complete the meal unless you're prepared to fork over a Porsche, then I'm probably going to say to you, we got a lot of matzah. Have a seat. We're not going to finish the meal for a long time. Just enjoy yourself. Our guests are all welcome to sit. And suddenly you've overstepped your negotiating ability. You have to negotiate for something that your father is prepared to make available to you, right? So you can try and find that maximum point where he will give it to you, but you'll still complete the Seder. Having said that, one of the things that my father encouraged our four siblings to do, my mother might have been behind it as well, is to claim that we all found it. Right? Because there is one philosophy that says, I got it, what are you going to give me for it? But how much nicer it is when all the children come at once, each one holding a piece of the afikomen container, saying, we got it, right? And so maybe you can't give as big a gift to 4 people as you would to 1, or maybe you'll reach down deep inside and say how important it is to everybody and try and find a way to give as good a gift. By the way, you can't give money on the Hag itself. Can you promise money? It's something you should ask your Rabbi. Right? But remember that there is a prize that you should give in some way. Had Gad Yah, right? So Had Gad Yah is a song we sing at the end of the Seder, and it's the story of the little goat that was eaten by the cat. That
it goes on forever, that one.
Right? And it's not simply, it's like everything else in Haggadah, it's a lesson. It's a lesson that the nation that hits Israel is conquered, let's say in this case it's Assyria. And Assyria is conquered by Babylon, which is conquered by Persia, which is conquered by Macedonia, or Greece, which is conquered by Macedon, which is conquered by Rome, and so it goes, right? But in the end, there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He protects His own, right? And that's what we know. So many people, when they sing the song, not only sing the song, but they make the sounds of the animals and the stick and everything like that, and it adds to it to make it a full thing. Aspects of appreciation, the central theme of the Seder. What is the least you can do for Hashem? Avadim Chayinu. There's a song we sing, right? We were slaves at one time. Know your roots, where you come from, how much you have grown, because you have Hashash HaTorah. You are not just happy with being a taker. You want to reciprocate. You want to use your gifts for a purpose. Your own giving. Right? This is a very important fact in the Seder. And you'll notice for your children that it's very hard for them to give, because what do they own?
Not too much.
Right?
They're toys.
So, they're toys. But how did they get their toys? You paid for them. So there is things they can give. They can give of their own creativity. When a child, however primitive it is, makes a drawing of something on Pesach, right? One should appreciate the effort that goes into it. Again, it's like Har Satov, and how much it encourages them. When a child does the 4 questions the first time, or sings a song, or, he's a certain age and he says, Tati, I have a Devar Torah that I learned in school about this, right? Everybody, especially the father, should be 100% attentive to this moment. Right? It's a make or break moment for many children. If at the end of it people say, Mazel Tov, beautiful, I have a question, whatever, right? The child feels, okay, right? This is a really special event. Everybody's listening to what I have to say, and it works. What if they say, oh yeah, I heard that before? Or, what are you talking about? You can crush somebody. Right? So it's very important that the gifts of your children, right? They give what they can, whether it's a Devar Torah, whether it's a song, whether it's a little drawing, that it be, whether it's a contribution to the making of the Seder, that it be acknowledged and appreciated. V'hi Yeshamda, that in every generation they rise up against us and God saves us. Right? Die, right? It would have been sufficient had God just taken us out of slavery, let alone give us a Torah and guide us through the desert, and in the end give us the land of Israel and the base of Mikdash, right? How much more so, right? Hodul Hashem, thank yous. Breaking the Hallel into 2 parts enables us to focus on the change. Don't take the change for granted. The story of eat the meal with matzah, moror, feel the change that as you move into the great feast. Remember, as I said, it's part of Hallel, really. Kingship, you should remember the past and not be conceited in our freedom. Check the order of the Pesach, the matzah, the moror. Why moror is last. Only after you have freedom can you really appreciate the bad things that were. Yeah. Even when we experience freedom today, we can see how bitter things are and integral. And I want to, just for, okay, we'll see what goes on here. Step by step, Pesach Seder. How are you holding up? You okay?
Good.
Okay, good.
Here at 50 minutes, we're going to...
50?
50 minutes and 8 seconds.
Okay, let's start again.